Hi everyone, welcome back to another session of BHA Live, an ongoing series of educational opportunities being hosted by Barbershop Harmony Australia's Harmony Academy. If this is your first session, welcome. Sit back and relax and enjoy tonight's presentation. And of course, a big welcome back to those who have already had a chance to experience one of our Friday night sessions. Now, before I get started, I'll get a little bit of technical housekeeping out of the way. If you've joined us via Zoom, please feel free to use the chat function to talk amongst yourselves. However, if you have a specific question about anything being presented, please make sure you submit that via the Q&A function. This will make sure that the questions all funnel through and get seen. We have a great session in store for you tonight. We're welcoming back the one and only Jen Howson to present a session called Mentoring and Building Strong Admin and Music Teams. Now, Jen has been a barbershopper since 1998. She has sung both bass and lead in quartet and chorus. Jen has attended many men's international conventions and has competed in 4 women's conventions in a chorus where she has competed and finished 6th, 2nd, 4th and 4th respectively. She is an avid quartet singer and has been placed as high as 3rd in Australia, making her international quartet debut in 2019 with her quartet Obsession. Jen is proud to be co-founder of Vocal Essence, Sweet Adeline Chorus in Queensland, where she is the director. As education faculty for both Sweet Adeline's Australia and Barbershop Harmony Australia, Jen thoroughly enjoys working with the barbershop membership across the nation. Her company, Dream Big Creations, thrives as an international coaching business that focuses on singing, performing, public speaking, mentoring leadership, writing and producing shows, and creating, teaching, and coaching choreography. She has mentored the participants in the BHA MC program and is a performance judge for the Australasian Guild of Barbershop Judges. Now let's get this show on the road. It is my great pleasure to hand you over to tonight's presenter, Jen Howson.
Hello, everyone. So excited to be here. Thanks, Dan. I always get a little worried when they say the one and only and then think, yeah, thank goodness for everyone that it's just the one and only Jen Howson. That's just way too many personalities. Very excited to be here again tonight. We are going to be talking about mentoring leadership teams. And so we're going to get right into it. And I do promise that we will have times for questions. I know that a lot of you do have a lot of questions around this very topic, which I'm quite passionate about. As recently appointed director of Vocal Essence, I also have been the artistic director and assistant director on the music team side, but also the TC or president for very many years in my chorus, and have had a lot of opportunities to mentor leaderships, both admin and music, across our beautiful nation, as well as in New Zealand and in America. So we're going to get right into it. And Dan is going to help me monitor. In case you have any questions, please pop those through the Q&A button, and we will make sure we answer all of your questions. There's not very many slides to share, but I do just want to go ahead and share with you my screen, which is going to be a PowerPoint presentation. So again, we'll pop back in and make sure there's any questions, but I'm just going to go through a couple of key elements and characteristics of building and mentoring a strong leadership team. So these are things that I personally think are essential values to have in a person on your team, regardless of whether it's administrative or music. So we're talking about essentially the qualities of a great leader. We're talking about honesty and integrity, confidence, inspiring others, really important in what we do, because what we do also has an element of vulnerability to it that most people walk in our doors trying to overcome. So that one's really important. Commitment and passion, good communicator. In fact, great communicator would probably be a better way to say that. Decision-making capabilities, accountability, delegation and empowerment, creativity and innovation, otherwise why bother? Empathy, really important. Resilience, because it is up and down. Anyone who's been a member of our beautiful organizations for any amount of time will tell you they've seen the top of the roller coaster, they've seen the bottom, and back again through the loop-de-loop and round again. And then we just get back on for another 16,000 rides. It's great. So that's really important, that resilience. Emotional intelligence, humility, transparency, and another one of my favorite to vision and purpose. So really important that we understand that those are the key elements of the leadership that we're looking for. I put myself to sleep, look at that. That we're looking for in our leadership, because we can't actually build a strong foundation of what our culture is going to be when we don't actually have an understanding of what's required to be a leader. So transitioning from there, we're going to talk about culture. Organizational culture can be generally understood as the philosophies, shared values, assumptions, and practices that define our social and psychological environment, which we have in every organizational group there is on the earth. Ours is a special one, if you ask me, because we also have, again, that vulnerability of sharing our voice, which is very personal to any of us. A culture governs how our members and leadership behave, how we act, how we perform our roles within the chorus, even just as a member. We know that there's no such thing as really just as a member. The culture is established by the leadership and then communicated and reinforced continuously, ultimately shaping our work ethic, perceptions of our group, habits, and understanding. This is really important as well when you think about marketing and membership, because we're actually putting out there who we are, what we do, why we do it, the most important question we have. And that's how we attract more people with like minds and like understanding of belonging to a culture like ours. We know it's not necessarily for everyone. That's okay, but we need to be clear about what we're communicating. So culture is often expressed in our members' self-image, inner workings of the organization, future expectations. What kind of chorus are you? What do you want to be when you grow up? That's what we're talking about. That's how we attract more members that are fit to retain the culture and stay around for long periods of time. It's how individuals identify themselves with the organization as a whole. You know, when they show that sense of pride of being a member of that chorus or being a member of that section, even in your chorus. Really, really important. It illustrates how a team can work toward achieving desired goals. You have to have goals. We know that. What kind, how many, how big, really depends on what you decide, where your leadership decides where you're going, what your whole chorus body decides works for them. But it really does affect the culture. We want to make sure that we are working toward achieving those desired goals, and it is aligned with the culture that we're putting out there, to the community that we live in, the organization as a whole that we belong to. The leadership is responsible for creating a solid culture that will promote growth and create a positive brand image. So this is where membership and marketing really meet up. So it's important that you understand, one, what is that brand image, and two, what kind of messages it's sending across, and how can we maximize all of the opportunities that we can get from that by making sure we are actually marketing that brand to the right people to come into our culture. And it's a lot of pressure for the leadership. Now, that doesn't just fall to the administrative leadership, that also falls to the music leadership. What kind of songs are you singing? What kind of image do you have as far as your music goes? What does your director put out there as the face of your organization? And is it going to attract the people that you're hoping to bring into your organization? So I'm just going to pop over to Dan for a second and make sure there's no questions on, because I want to be able to talk about all this stuff. We've got a little bit of time and we only have like 6 slides to go through. There's some really cool information in here, but if there's any questions on culture, or key elements of being a great leader that we might have.
Hey, Jen, no, we have no questions come through the Q&A yet.
Awesome.
So reminder to everyone watching that is that Q&A button available. So feel free to jump in and post any questions that you have.
And no question is a silly question. Even if it's a little off topic, I'll just say that we're going to get to that. But any question, just pop it on through. I had Chinese for dinner, in case that's one of the questions. Is that a question I heard pop in?
No, that was a notification I should have silenced.
It's always fun here on the BHA webinar to figure out what's going on.
We did have one question that has actually popped through, and I could have blamed that on that notification. So we do have a question asking, is it useful to get an outside opinion of your culture?
That's a great question. I love that question. I think that we get an outside opinion of our culture when we get new members that come in, but I do think it would be great to be able to have a non-biased, non-judgmental outside opinion of that culture from someone who's not interested. not interested in singing or not interested in a cappella music or not interested in barbershop. It doesn't, you can actually make that umbrella as big as you want. The reason I think that's a important factor and a great element is because if you were going to turn over a document that you wrote, you want to make sure that someone's going to understand what that document's all about when they know nothing about singing or the organization or a cappella music or competition or shows or anything. So if you can hand over some information about your culture and that person knows nothing, has no expectations, and then turns around and says, oh, I get it, this sounds great, what's this about, what does that mean, then you're actually getting a really clear indication of what's simplified and clear and what might be a little muddy. We take for granted the terminology that we know and use. And the longer we've been in the organization, I think I touch on this later, the longer we've been in the organization, the more we forget that we actually have our own vernacular. So I think it is really important to get that outside perspective from somebody who could offer you some advice as to, I think this is really clear and I have no idea what that term means. So that's a great question. I would say getting an outside opinion of that is great. I do think it's important that you set up the structure of what your culture is and the expectations of what your culture is within your leadership organization. For my groups, we actually review our mission, vision, and objectives once every 3 years, just to make sure that they're not only solid, it is still who we are and what we want, but it's also been modified with and modernized with today's vocabulary of what's going on in the world today and what the standardized words and vernacular we should be using are. So I think that's also really important. Someone reading our mission, vision, and objectives, as an example, our mission, vision, and objectives from 10 years ago would probably go, so what's the deal with gender neutrality or equality? What's going on with that? What about diversity? Because 10, 20 years ago, we didn't focus on some of those words that are really, really important today. So really great question. Absolutely. Ask anyone, ask your mom. Really, it doesn't matter. If they understand what it's about, then everyone else will. Also, you have tools at your fingertips with your region education or your national education faculty, and also anyone who has been instrumental in building an organization, whether it's their livelihood through work, not singing or barbershop related, or any other people who are founders of choruses or who are successful choruses, or just people you respect. We're all in this together. So anyone I know in our organization, if you flicked me an email tomorrow and said, hey, can you just read over this description of our culture, our mission, vision, and objectives and let us know what pops out? I know that anyone in our society would be more than happy to have a look at that. And that is an excellent thing to do. We have a lot of people in our organization who actually, this is what they do for a job. So we can actually send it through to them and say, I know that you've done this, but can you have a look at mine? And they would do that. So please make sure you're using your resources. Such a great question. Thank you to whoever asked that. I'm going to move on. And if we have any other questions about culture, we can definitely come back to that. But I'm just going to go on and move into communication. So my feeling on communication, generally speaking, is that it needs to be relentless. I know that might seem a little extreme and dramatic. However, we need to run our courses a bit like a business. And so you would never walk into your job and not know exactly what was expected of you. You would never have your employees walk into your company and not be sure that they knew exactly what was expected of them. So I think it's really important that regardless of the extremes of your level or what your expectations are, it doesn't matter whether you're a chorus that gets together to sing in someone's living room or you're a highly competitive chorus whose goals are to win international competition. It doesn't actually matter. The communication needs to be clear. What is the expectation? We're always going to have in our volunteer, I'm going to use this word, it's going to be okay, hobby of an organization, it's okay that we have people that run the spectrum of what they want. That's just who we are. We're a nonprofit community organization. That is what we are. But we are going to have people who just want to get out of their house and have a bit of a sing. How fun is this? To the people who are going, I want to be an international champion quartet lead, or queen of harmony, or master 700 chorus director, or international chorus champion director, whatever it is. We run the spectrum. We just do, which is part of what makes us so very special. So communication does need to be relentless. You need to offer information, thoughts, and your ideas clearly and frequently. One of the things that we've learned time and time again, I'm almost ashamed to say, is we forget, and I mentioned this earlier, we get a bunch of new people in and then we use our own vernacular. We are literally from our own planet and they have no idea what we're actually talking about. And they just smile and nod like, okay, because they're brand new. They don't think they're supposed to do anything else yet. They don't even know what it means. So it's important that we frequently communicate what we're talking about, what our ideas are, what certain words mean, especially around music and the competitive element of what we do. It really is its own special side of things. So make sure that you are communicating frequently and in different medias. We still have people in our organization, and I reckon we always will have, thank goodness, people who are not on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I'm sure I've missed 17 of them. I don't know. Or even have email, but barely check it. Someone needs to send them a text message that says, check your email. We all have that. So it's important that you do actually reach out in every media. I know it feels a little frustrating because it feels like holding hands, but we do have to offer every opportunity to be successful. And that's one I think that we often could be much better at. Have someone in your course that does that. That's all there is to it. Simple. It's a job. Awesome. Simplify and be direct. Say what you mean. Say what you mean. And when you look at them and you realize that they don't understand what you mean, say it in as many ways as you need to simply say what you mean. We all need to understand what's expected of us, and we also need to be able to communicate what we expect, because it's a two-way street. We pay to be part of this awesome organization. So you need to run it a little bit like a business. So where the processes kick in, which I know everyone loves to hate and hates to love, they're really important because everything's then streamlined and you don't have to worry about that. You can just get to the music, which is what we're actually all here for, and the people, of course. Listen and encourage input. And when you encourage input, pause, stop, actually listen. Most of us, even the best of leaders within us, get really caught up on our own personal agenda. It's not that we do it on purpose. There's just a lot to cover and a little bit of time. And those 3-hour meetings of music team meetings or management team meetings or executive meetings, they go so quickly. And we're really excited because usually we're smart when we attach like a social element to it, whether we're having some beers or we're having some barbecue or whatever we're doing. And we're so excited about that element. We get about halfway through the meeting and we forget to listen. So please be sure that from a communication standpoint, you're understanding to do that effectively. 2 ears, 1 mouth, listen twice as much as you speak. It really makes a world of difference. Illustrate through stories is my next offer, my next tip. Don't be afraid to share your experiences, even if you've been in the organization for a very short amount of time, but you've got a ton of experience in your job or within your family or other groups that you've been in. That is priceless information. So we want to make sure that you're illustrating through stories by sharing your experiences. Obviously, making it pertinent to the conversation. We all love a good story, but there are some that are actually left for the beers at the end and some that are actually pertinent to the communication when we're trying to resolve whether we want to compete or not compete, or, add other elements to our culture or not. So there's some really important stories that need to be shared, and there's some that can wait for, beers in the pool. All good, very cool. But there's something to be gained from illustrating through your experiences and your stories to communicate a message about a pertinent fact that you're trying to, maybe offer devil's advocate on, or another perspective. Either way, whatever it is, it's actually a really good way to communicate in real man's terms in the moment. We all understand a good story about our kids, or the teacher that we had to go see, or another singer we had to deal with, or another group we once were in, or our boss. We all understand that. So use those stories to communicate when you go, hang on a second, that reminds me of this. Probably very important. I had the privilege of working for a company that was highly motivated in educating its team members. It was an accounting firm, a really large accounting firm here on the Gold Coast, and I loved working for that company. My favorite thing was specifically that any training that they brought in, not that I didn't use it for my job, because I did, but I also instantly associated it with my barbershop life. I felt really honored to be there, that they were offering me some level of education that I could apply to every aspect of my life. And I find that in barbershop, with the offer of education that we get, whether it's through master classes or webinars or Harmony University, Harmony Academy, any of those things, we actually have such a high level of education that comes to us that I guarantee you've thought about going, hang on, I can actually apply that to my life at home, or my job, or my business, or my children. Such a great way. And it goes both ways. So make sure you're illustrating through stories. And then affirm with action. You can talk all you want, but if you're actually not going to follow it up and get the job done, why bother? You're just wasting everyone's time. And this is an important element of where communication comes back to setting up your team, which we're going to talk about in a second, because it's important that you have the right people in place doing the right things. So you're going to say what you mean, and then you're going to do what you say. And I think that we fall short sometimes, whether it's a time management issue, or whether we've got great ideas, but we're actually not awesome at following through on those ideas, but we're not very self-aware, so we don't understand that we're not great at that bit. We're just the ideas guy. That gets in the way of the success of your club. And we want to make sure that we are setting ourselves up to be successful. So make sure you are saying what you mean and then doing what you say. Are there any communication questions or Q&A questions we've got going on now?
Yes, we do. We have a few more now for the culture section earlier, but I'll give you one we just came through regarding communication. We've had one from Claire who's asking, how soon do you advise a new member that your chorus is competitive without scaring them away? They may just be coming for a casual sing.
Awesome. Hi, Claire. Great question. Look, that is definitely a culture question, in that you can choose to be as transparent as you want. We've gone back and forth with some of the things that we've done, and we're surprised to find that at one point we had members who didn't realize they were even barbershoppers. I was actually quite offended. I was shocked, to be honest, because that's not the communication that we all agreed would be what we shared. We want to make sure that we are being transparent at the expectations of what's required, especially when we talk about competition. And it doesn't matter whether you're a member of BHA or Sweet Adelines. What actually is important is that you are actually transparent about those things, because it does affect their family. It affects their financial situation, the level of expectation of learning your music to a certain level, as well as what happens when your chorus in particular needs to hear that competition chorus, and those people are going to need to step off the risers for a minute. What does that feel like? And instantly, if you put yourself in their shoes, which is really important with culture and communication, you put yourself in their shoes, and you would want to know what was going on. There's one element of being so starstruck and so in the moment that this wonderful thing comes into your life, but you remember when you were new, and you remember that you kind of go, oh gosh, I wish I knew that when I got in. There's a fine line sometimes between, would it have changed whether you stayed or not? The chances are probably it wouldn't have changed it. It wouldn't have changed it. You just would have had to work around a couple of things, like, ooh, do I tell my family that it's not actually 1 day a week? Do I tell my family that it's actually going to cost the same amount as the school fees for my kid every year? Do I tell my family that I'm going to be going away on these weekends away or almost week-long away trips and I'm excited about it. So it's really about understanding all of that. So I would say, depending on the culture of your chorus, which comes through your mission, vision, and objectives, that should define whether you're a competition chorus or not. Ours flat out say we are a competition chorus. We plan to compete every year, COVID providing. I couldn't help it. I had to get one in there, at least one. There'll be at least two more, I reckon. So we are very open and honest about the fact that we are a competitive chorus and that we expect people to do this kind of work at home and expected to show up to these commitments. We talk about what is mandatory and what is optional. So we talk about the fact that the things that lead into contest are mandatory. And if they can't make those things, doesn't mean they can't compete. It does mean that they might have to do some extra things to show that they are prepared to compete. So they've done the same kind of work as everyone else. We just try to be consistent. For the things that are optional, we make sure they know those things. Not gonna lie, we probably play those up a little bit so that they know, okay, well, it's okay. I don't need to do all the Christmas gigs, but I really need to make sure I'm doing the annual show, my boot camp, my retreat, my competition, and this is what I need to do that. We also make sure they know things like, you're going to need to take some time off of work. That affects their entire household, their entire family, their entire way of living. So it's really important that we make sure we are transparent about those things without making it seem like, look, you better run right now because this is so much more than you ever thought it was going to be, even though we know that. At the end of the day, we want to make the environment, the culture, something that they just can't miss out on, where they go, gosh, okay, I know that it's a lot of time, more time than I thought I was going to invest in a choir, because it's not, that it's time away from my family, it's money out of my pocket, but man, this is so cool. I can't imagine not giving this a shot. And that's where the culture element is so important, that we make sure, one, we're understanding that, we let them know we're understanding that their life is just like the rest of our lives, and that we all are doing it. One way or the other, we're figuring out how to do it, but we're honest about what that looks like, whether they've got small kids or older husbands and wives, family they need to take care of in different states, jobs that are highly demanding and what that's going to look like. I mean, how many doctors and nurses and teachers do we have in our organization who automatically have restrictions on what kind of time they can take off? You know, and that's not even getting into everyone else's job that's tough, let alone the stay-at-home mom or dad. My goodness. So I would choose to work toward a culture that communicates transparently and honestly what is expected in your organization to do the things you have to do. And that might be different in the first half of the year than the second half of the year. Go ahead and say so. But also be clear. Do you take members who don't compete? Or do you only take full-fledged members? Because that's going to come up. People are going to go, oh, that sounds really great. I'd like to be a member, but I can't go to contest. You know, and depending on when they come in, that might be okay for that year. But does that mean every year? Because we don't actually have a membership that allows for half-assed members, is really the only way to say it. So great question. I definitely would work toward being transparent, but make sure it is clearly stated in your mission, vision, and objectives of what it is that you do and what's your focus, what's your culture all about, why do you do what you do, and what is it that you do. Any other questions, Dan?
We do. We have a couple of questions back from your previous slide on culture. If you'd like me to move to those. Yep.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, so we have one from Gordon who asks, do you see a difference between leadership and dominance?
Ooh, good, Gordon. I love the choice of words. I do. And we are going to get into, again, just to go back to, and we can make these slides available to you. I have no problem sharing all of my information. But some of those core elements, let me just, there we go. Some of those core elements that I talked about, just in leadership in general, which were, you know, around honesty and integrity, inspiring others, empathy and resilience, emotional intelligence, a lot of those things. Also, those interpersonal skills are really important to how this culture that we breed actually thrives. I have an issue with anyone trying to dominate a leadership. And I feel very strongly about that, even as someone who has been blessed and forced to be in the role of president or TC for a long period of time. You get out and then you have to get back in, and when you're trying to build a chorus up to be the best that it can be, it gets a bit tricky sometimes. But it should never be something that you have to question yourself about. The bottom line is, do the right thing. Do the right thing by your culture. Do the right thing by your chorus bylaws and mission, vision, and objective. Do the right thing by your members. Put yourself in their shoes, and it should actually be a whole lot easier. Surround yourself by a team of people who have the chorus's best interest in mind, and words like dominance shouldn't actually come in to play. Words like dictatorship definitely should not come into play. There's not just a right and a wrong way to do things. There's what works and what doesn't work, and we have to be very fluid and flexible with that. The culture itself, which is why we actually check ours every 3 years to make sure, is this still who we are and what we want? It's okay if you need to modify some of that depending on the times, depending on the people, depending on what you're trying to accomplish, those future expectations. But any one person coming in saying it needs to be this way and this is the way it is, and if you don't like it, then you could go to the chorus up the road. First and foremost, is that an individual outlook, or is that actually the mission and vision of the entire chorus? And if you're not sure, go back to your entire membership. Your leadership should be made up of quite a few people that should represent a quorum of your organization, of your chorus or your chapter, your club. But if you're really unsure, do a health check. Do a survey monkey. Ask them what they want. Ask them what they think. Ask them what they love. Ask them what they don't like, and be brave, because at the end of the day, it's their club, not yours, and not any one person. So that culture needs to evolve around that. And we know that every culture does evolve. It has to. Dominance of any one person, or just sticking to something that's always been the way that dominates the future of the chorus, that's a really unhealthy place to linger for too long. Now, if you're trying to give it its time and make sure it has an opportunity to thrive, and you're doing all the right things that put things in motion that create a forward flow to the evolution of the ensemble or the chapter of the club, great. That might take a year or 2 or 3. That's not necessarily dominance of people being stubborn and going, let's not change anything. Let's not change anything. But we can often get stuck in a rut where we've got the same people on our leadership teams, because they're the people that put their hand up, bless them, and we are so grateful for them. But are they the right people for the team? And if they are, then dominance shouldn't be in there. It should be fluid and flexible. I'm a very passionate person, which often translates into stubborn, because I've already tried that, and I've been doing this for almost 25 years, but I still have no right to say this is the way that it needs to get done. What do I know? That was yesterday. Today presents, as we know in this world today, especially, how easily and how quickly things can change overnight. We need to be fluid and flexible. We need to play to our strengths, and we need to keep the best interest of our choruses in mind when we make every decision we make. That's our job as leaders. So I hope I answered that question for you, Gordon. And if not, feel free to pipe up and give me some more specifics. Do we have any other questions in there, Dan?
We do. I'll run this next one we have from Richard, who asks, he says, you mentioned the membership and marketing portfolios. Could you elaborate a bit about these crossovers, and could the music portfolio work if the others aren't given enough attention?
Great. Two-part question. So the marketing and membership relationship is probably one of the most, if not the most important relationship in our chapters and clubs. You can't really have one without the other. And the marketing umbrella is massive. The membership umbrella has 2 parts to it. It's got the get the new members in and do that bit, the administrative bit, and then the retention of member, which is that care factor. The marketing element has a lot to do with, how do we get those members in? And then what are we offering them when we do that? So, and then how do we alleviate some of the potential obstacles in their way by finding ways to get more money so that we don't have to pay so much money? I mean, they've got quite a big job. So the relationship between marketing and membership is vital to our organization, because if we don't have one, we don't have the other. Either way you look at it, we don't have members, we don't have anything to market. We don't have marketing, we don't get any members. The music side of that is kind of the piece de resistance. If we don't have music and we don't have it at a level that our culture expresses, then why are we actually doing what we're doing, and what kind of product are we actually offering? So then we don't get members to market to, or we don't get the opportunity to market what we do or why we do it. And so it's just this kind of trickle effect. So those three things that I like to call them the 3 M's: marketing, membership, and music. You can't actually have a chorus without those 3 things being your top priority. And everything that you do in your culture with those 3 things should always come back to those 3 things. With this show, will we be adding to our membership, adding to our financial stability, adding to our marketing growth in the community that will broaden our horizons, broaden our membership, and broaden our outreach, as well as our profile in the community, which we all know helps with grants, right? Which is a whole nother element and a whole nother class. So really, really important. And the music side of that is really why we do what we do. You get a bunch of audience members to come along. In that audience, they're going to be potential members. If you're not enthralling them and enchanting them with the musical product, you're going to get that polite applause, and they might come back to your next show because they're related to someone, or because someone asked nicely and they don't know how to say no, or you're going to get a new member, or you're not maybe not going to get a new member, but they need you to sing at their granddad's 80th birthday. And so you get a gig out of that, which then somebody else at the 80th birthday might hire you, or you might find a new member. So they are constantly linked together in the establishment of the betterment of your ensembles, the establishment of the growth of your culture. This is how we know whether it works or we don't, whether we're communicating the right things to the public, with our brand. So every one of those things comes back to your marketing and membership relationship, and how music is involved in those things. If we don't have people, we can't sing. If we don't have music, there's nothing for the people to sing. And either way, what are we selling and why? So really important that you understand that those 3 elements are your bread and butter for your culture to even be set up, to even worry about having a leadership for. But it also comes back to why that specific leadership is so important. So I'm just aware of the time. So I think that I'm going to just real quick, Dan, are there any other questions on cultural communication?
We got one quick one. I'll just throw that to you now, Jen. Just from David, who asks, how does compensation contribute to culture?
Right. So just in this, he's probably just referring to, I'm assuming, David, that this picture that I've used has environment and atmosphere, compensation, standards and policies, people, leadership, organization. So if you could, it was the best picture I could find, first of all. But if you think about compensation from a reward standpoint, and by reward, I mean fulfilling. Yes, that can come back to environment. Yes, that can come back to the organization, or even people for that matter. But if we look at compensation from a fulfillment standpoint on why am I doing this? Why do I give up my time? Why do I pay my dues? Why do I put myself forward to compete? Why do I attend every show and gig? Why do I do those citizenship ceremonies? That compensation, that award and fulfillment is how it comes back to the culture. From a compensation standpoint, this has got a little clock on there, which I liked. It was about the time that I put in is also rewarded with what I get back from the culture in this organization. That saying that we have in our barbershop life, which is we come for the music, but we stay for the people. So again, just going back to Richard's question about how important that music element is, but that we actually stay for the people, which is more about that compensation element of why do I take the time? And we know for most of us, especially the people on this webinar tonight, we give quite a lot to our organizations because we're quite passionate about how much it means to us. That's the compensation. Then we give it back tenfold and pay it forward because that's part of the culture and the organization itself, the environment, what we know is the best thing to do for our people in our leadership. And then we're just guided by those standards and principles. So I hope that answers that. I know it's a little interesting. That's why I didn't really go over the photo, but that's how I look at that compensation element. It doesn't have to do with monetary fulfillment. You could look at it from our role as a leadership is to also create opportunities to get an income, whether it's through shows or grants, that actually alleviates some of the financial stress of members' dues and what they need to pay for and why. Coming from a very, very large chorus in America, we earned enough money where I didn't have to pay for my registration package, my all events tickets or anything like that. I just filled out the form that said I intended to compete. They registered me. If something changed, it was my responsibility to sell that registration, or I had to pay for it myself if I didn't attend. But my course actually paid for that for me. And I know as a leader, that is a massive goal of mine, to be in a financial situation where I can pay back my members for everything that they give to our organization by paying for their all events registration to a BHA convention or a Sweet Adelines convention. So you can look at the compensation from that point of view. Obviously, we don't get paid to be part of this, nonprofit volunteer hobby organization. We pay dues for that. For me, I like to look at the compensation more as the fulfilling rewards. But there are ways that the leadership can proactively make sure we are giving back financially to our members, subsidize every retreat, give a discount to our youth members because we want to attract them, whatever that kind of takes. But that's how I would use the compensation in those two terms. Those are great questions. Thank you so much for that. I'm going to move on to past communication and just talk about setting up your team a little bit. This is a really tricky thing in our organization, I have personally found, and being from the Gold Coast, quite a transient place. We've got people here who have already raised their families and they just want to travel, or they're university students. And so for us, it's a bit difficult to find that right target market of member. However, they are here, which is exciting. And all over the country, I reckon that's the case. But setting up your team when you're a nonprofit volunteer organization who has all kinds of people of all walks of life coming through the door can be quite difficult. I wanted you to remember a couple of things that I've learned in my experience. People will do a better job if it's a job that they enjoy doing. So if you've got someone who is just so passionate about balancing the books and checks and balances and how money works, well, if that's not your treasurer or financial coordinator, I'm not sure what you're on about, because not everyone loves to do that. Just a topic off the top of my head, all jobs I've done. In our volunteer organization, it helps that the jobs don't add too much more time to their plates or take too much more time away from their families and other commitments. Again, I laugh because I call this our hub session, or a lifestyle, as it were, for a lot of us, and that can tend to get in the way. So we need to be careful of that. I know we joke about it a lot, but we do ask a lot from our leadership with not a lot of perks, to be honest. So if you can find people who already enjoy doing the job, or you can find people who kind of do that job already, and so they don't really have to do much more. It's a couple more emails, or it's 20 more minutes touching that account because they already do bookkeeping for their job, or whatever the case may be. If you can find people that actually are already doing it, you'll be much better off. And I know that's like the dream world, I know, but if you can, that's really great. So also, if they already have skills, you got somebody that walks into your course and they're a marketing person in their job. Hello, red flag, red flag, red flag. That might be great to grab them and get them involved, at least in your marketing team, if not your marketing VP or your marketing coordinator. But you also need to be prepared to upskill your teams, because that is generally not how it works in most of our courses. We don't have the perfect president and the perfect financial coordinator or treasurer or marketing VP or music VP. We don't have those things. We have to train them up. So it's really important that you use your resources, whether it's national education faculties or international education faculties, or there is a ton of information online in general about leadership, or you just ask people who might know somebody who might know who somebody might know. That's just generally how our network works. But it's really important that you do use your resources, because those people need to be upskilled. They could be the best marketing coordinator ever. They just need some skills and some guidelines as to how that works in our organization. But if they come with some skills, great. Or maybe the person with the skills can help upskill the person without the skills, who's actually great for the job, just needs a couple of tools under the belt. Be prepared to be fluid and flexible in the roles and play to your strengths. Whilst we all have job descriptions in our leadership, whether it is administrative or music, it doesn't necessarily mean that element of our job, even though it falls under our umbrella, needs to stick with our job description, because chances are that's not going to get done. Why not be fluid and flexible and ask on the team, say, gosh, I am actually really not good about checking my email for things like that. Would somebody be willing to do that? And then we play to our strengths. Really, really important. If you take nothing away from this webinar tonight, that's the big one. Be fluid, be flexible, be willing to play to your strengths, and acknowledge that. Make sure it's documented that that's the role of your secretary. But your secretary is not really great at that. So we're going to actually allow this person to do it, who's a general member, or maybe it's your marketing coordinator. But make sure that you understand that that's actually a secretary communication coordinator job, just not on this particular team. And that is okay. As long as it gets done and it gets done well, who cares? Who cares? Nobody goes, well, she was the communication coordinator, he was the secretary, and he didn't do that. So, he obviously wasn't the secretary. Nope. He was a really good secretary because he played to his strengths and said, I'm not good at that. Can somebody else do that? And your events guy goes, actually, I'm really good at that. And then it's done. So play to your strengths. Your admin team needs a music person, and your music team needs an admin person. For the men's organization, generally speaking, you've got your music VP position, which plays both of those roles on your music team and your executive or board or whatever we've got. For Sweet Adelines, we generally don't have that, or maybe you do. That's great. We call it the music TC because we need to have that person on our music team. That person backs up your director on the management team or the executive or the board, depending on what you've got. And it just is another element to eliminate anything that your director may get distracted and drop the ball on. It's just the right-hand man. So making sure you've got a music VP type person or a music TC type person that is both on your music team and your administrative team is actually going to be like a secret weapon. Also making sure that person understands it's an admin role. So if they want to be on the music team because they think that they'd be great to the lead section, okay, but then that's not the role for them if they're more musically inclined. We need an admin person on our music team. Have turnover. Do not be afraid to let your teams roll over. Now, most courses have terms of office set up for their administration team, whether it's 1 year or 2 years, and whether your terms get to be repeated and there's a cutoff. That's all fine and good. A lot of times that's in our bylaws and on how long people can stay in office or how long they have to be out before they have to get back in office. Get back in office. I meant have to, but I'll say get. But there should be a limit on that. Just going back to Gordon's question about dominance, this is where that gets in the way a little bit because, we tend to get set in our own way on our own personal agenda of what we know has worked over the years or not worked over the years. And we forget that our course has evolved. So it's not actually the same course you were dealing with 8, 10, 5 years ago. It's a different course today. So some of those things you might be stubborn about trying because you already did that. Well, maybe it's time to try that again because this is a different course with a different team in place and a different, culture and communication setup. So, you need to be open to that. And sometimes having that turnover really makes a difference because change is growth, and a fresh perspective often can make the difference in keeping your teams and your course healthy. And asking your course members, what they want and how they think it would go best. You're going to get all kinds of fun answers to those things. That's why we make those, anonymous surveys that they can fill out. And we take all the information and we bring it back to the leadership. A whole nother class, mind you. For music teams, you should roll over every year. Even if you wind up being the same team that's reapplied and put into place, but chosen by your director, that's okay. The cool thing about it is it gives people the option to step aside if they either want to do different things or they're just a bit tired and burnt out, and it feels really bad because you don't want to let the team down. And then it also allows others to feel like they can step up and be considered, where oftentimes we might have people that go, oh, well, I want to apply for that job because clearly so-and-so is already the baritone section leader. But what if the baritone section leader wants to step out and have a break, but the other person hasn't put their hand up. So now all of a sudden we've got this, watch and worry thing going on, and it's really unnecessary. So definitely want to make sure that you are rolling over your teams regularly. Make sure you communicate that in the culture of your chorus so that everyone understands that, we roll over our music team every single year. So it doesn't matter how great you are. It doesn't matter what accolades or accomplishments you've got under your belt. We're going to roll you. Everyone's out at the same time. And then we reapply and we get to be reassigned to that position. Great. In the meantime, your director or your leadership may have decided the year before that you want to add some different positions to the team, in which case you might look at who's in what position and what would be better suited. On our admin teams, often that's already predetermined by our standing rules or our rules of incorporation. That's great. What are those terms? Are we aware of them? Are we prepared to succession plan? That's coming up next. Actually, next. So are there any questions about setting up your teams?
No, we have no questions at the moment, Jen. I think we're probably good to move on.
Awesome.
To the next slide.
We will do that. Cool. If you have any questions about that or you give it some thought and you need more information, you can also contact me privately. That's cool. So the next thing I want to talk about, and this is one of the things I'm extremely passionate about, is training and development of those teams. So it's one thing to get these great people in, whether they've got experience in their work life, home life, former life, whatever it is, or they don't. It's our job to make sure that we're not only building those skills, but that we are building those skills in relationship to the culture of our organization. So you can see on this slide, and I'll actually show you in a second the full document that I've created here. So I've got a training and development plan that I put in place specifically to my chorus, which is a female chorus. And we have a couple of different things that we go through. We have an audition team. We've got a section leader and training team. We've got a section leader team, a specialist team, a assistant directing team. The directing team actually has 4 levels itself. So you can see that each one of these levels actually, I'm going to bring it up here actually. Can you see that, Dan, the music team 2021?
Yes, that's good.
Cool, just making sure. It's just a better picture of it. So this is actually an insert from our training and development guide that we actually hand every person who steps onto our music team. And it actually takes them to every level of our music team and how they can work their way through each one of these levels, what they need to do to go, I am a section leader in training or a slit green level 2 because I have completed 10 assessments on my own. So we not only give them the training to do those things, we actually give them the opportunity to do those things and then tick it off on their list. These kind of programs are really important, in my opinion, for training and development of your leadership team. The other thing that I'm really passionate about, which it took me a really, really long time to figure out, is you want to use your meeting time wisely. So you don't want to just get on a music team or an executive meeting and talk about the same things you talk about every single time. You want to actually use those times that you're together as training and development opportunities, and use your technology to deal with your business. Have a chat group, send out an email, teach them how you want them to respond to that. Tell them it needs to be done timely. That's part of being a responsible leader, and deal with that stuff a lot more quickly than having to wait to a monthly or a weekly bi-weekly, whatever it is, music team or management team meeting, and then use that extra time that you're going to take and put in, because that's what we do as leaders in this organization, and actually train your people to be better leaders. Give them the music skills, give them the leadership skills, give them the training skills in their specific role to make sure that they're comfortable, confident, and excited about doing the job. It also speaks to letting your chorus know that this is a team culture. It is not the director's chorus. It is not the team coordinator's chorus or the president's chorus. It is the membership's chorus. And everyone has that equal opportunity to get trained and be developed into a leader in the chorus. And that's how they give back. And then we're back to that compensation question that Dave had earlier. How do I give back to this organization that gives me so much? And it works twofold. So threefold, really. So having these programs in place so that the growth and the success can be tracked is also going to show you whether or not you're doing all the right things. You're giving out the things in the culture that you promised. In your culture, you say that you are going to train and develop your music team and your administrative team, but then you have nothing that shows that you're actually doing that. Well, the proof is in the pudding. And this also allows the individual member to take personal responsibility as to how much they want to learn. Do they want to be a director? Or are they happy to help and be a buddy in the chorus? Do they want to be a president or a team coordinator? Or are they just happy to be a general member because they want to go ahead and offer information that that allows them to give back to their club. Okay. I'm just going to finish up with the succession planning, because it just follows right off of this, and then we'll ask questions, because I know we're running short on time, even though we did start a little late. So succession planning, basically be proactive, have a plan, look for candidates that are strong candidates, let them know that you're thinking of them so they can actually say, no, that's not for me, or gosh, yes, I'd be really interested in that, or surprise, surprise, I don't want to be on the music team. I want to be on the executive. I want to be on the board. I want to be on the management team. And you're going, oh my goodness, thank goodness. I want to be your financial coordinator or treasurer. Yes, please. And then step up the development in their efforts. Allow them to take some time to see how they go in a bit of the role. Take on a little element of it, whether it's a project or they're helping out the actual head of that team, to see whether or not they're going to be able to handle it, and whether or not they're going to work well with the team. It's really important, those people skills. And then do a trial run and make sure that they've got the potential to be a successor. And I think from there, you really would be allowed to enable a real positive growth environment in your culture, get the right people in there. Look, there's times where it's really unbalanced. We've got this perfect administrative team and our music team is a little bit lacking, or our music team is amazing, but we're missing some elements on our administrative that would make these things so easy. We just call that Tuesday at about 10 a.m. Happens everywhere, every week. We just deal with that. And that's why being fluid and flexible and playing to those strengths are so important, because then the pressure's off a little bit, and we just get done what we need to get done, as long as we communicate what is going on and who is in charge of that and how we're going to know whether it gets done or not. I'm really sorry. I know we went through those last two elements really quickly. That hour goes so fast. Is there any questions about training and development and succession planning that I can answer for you quickly?
Yes, we do. We've got David who's asked, he's very impressed with your template that you demonstrated before and is wondering whether you'd be willing to share a copy.
Absolutely. That copy of that template actually comes with a full training and development manual. So if you're happy to have the whole thing, I'll make sure that it gets to BHA and they can put it out with however we're distributing those documents.
Yeah, well, I'll talk about that at the end, perhaps. And David also asks whether you have role descriptions for all the leadership roles common to choruses.
Yeah, I do actually personally have a lot of those. We actually give that out when we put out the application, or when we know that our AGM is coming up and we're going to have that rollover. They are Sweet Adeline specific, and even more than that, vocal lesson specific. But I'm happy to share those as well, and you can tweak them as you need to for your culture.
Great. Now, Justine also asks, can you expand some more on the mentoring component in leadership?
Yeah. Hey, Justine. Definitely. So I offer in every management team or administrative executive board, whatever we're working with here, meeting, there's a component that is actually a leadership training part of it. So I actually do an element on how to be a great leader, whether that's about communication or that's about listening skills or that's about, oh my gosh, there's so many things I could go on and on and on. But I actually take a component of that meeting and do a leadership training and development segment of that, and it kind of builds. So we do for our music team, we do a music theory and leadership. For our management team, we do a leadership and development, and then for both, we have a training and development on how we build up their skills to succession plan. So we put a lot of effort into training our people because we want them to feel good about what they do, and we want to make it as easy as we can. And so, yeah, if you can message me privately if you want a little bit more information about some of the topics I've used. But you could literally Google leadership training, and you could tailor that to your course in a heartbeat. And if you need some clever ideas about that, I'm full of clever ideas, as you know. So just ask me. So yeah, if you want to contact me privately, I can give you some information on that. Sometimes it's a video that I have them watch. Like Simon Sinek is one of my favorite leadership motivators, and so I will show a video of him and his whole spiel on the circle of why. There's all kinds of great information. Jan Carley gives some great stuff from specifically from a singing organization standpoint, which is brilliant. Understanding how people's brains work and what you're dealing with personalities and communication. All kinds of really fun stuff that you can get into doing to train your leadership on the leadership mentoring component specifically. Great question. Hit me up.
Yes, a couple more, Jen. We've got another one from Richard, who's asking, this is more about the team portion from a little earlier. What if no one wants to step up for a position? Should you just leave it vacant?
Great question. Look, in our bylaws and incorporation laws for our administration teams, we often can't leave those vacant. Somebody needs to be in there. So if you're in a position where the job needs to be filled, again, that fluid and flexible thing comes into play. From a music team perspective, I leave that empty. If I don't have someone who has the skills to fulfill a role, and even if it's somewhere on my development chart here, and I might not have a specialist, but I've got a section leader in training, which means I don't have a section leader or a specialist, I will leave those blank. And the goal is to upskill that person or whoever's interested into coming up the ranks into those roles. So I would definitely leave it blank. Don't just fill it. If it's music team related, if it's administrative, you may have to fill it, but fluid and flexible. Don't put someone in a role as your treasurer who can't, who's not going to balance your books on a daily/weekly basis. Don't do that. Find somebody who you can teach to do that, or find someone who can do part of that, and you can take off the rest because somebody else can play the strengths. Great question. Thank you, Richard.
Okay, we got one more question from Gordon. He asks, what do you find works in encouraging members to learn new music?
Great. A gun and a bat and a helmet is often a good way to go. I would use a soft bat though. It's a little less intrusive. Look, the motivation has to be there for the members. So that comes back to a culture standpoint. If your culture isn't set up and defined that that's the expectation of your members to come in and learn the music at home, prepared to sing at rehearsal, whether there's a qualification process or there's not, if that's not clearly communicated to your members coming in, you're actually not sticking to any kind of culture. If your culture is that you just come in, you're having a sing and it's all fun, you have to understand that that's actually what you set yourself up for. So you need to have a look at your culture, your mission, vision, and objectives, and discuss whether or not it's important enough from a music standpoint that you communicate to new members that that's your expectation because you want to be a certain level, which means notes and words and breaths and rhythms are learnt, not at chorus. Then that's something that you have to address in the culture from the beginning. And if you already have an established culture that doesn't meet those criteria and you want to change that culture, everyone needs to be on board. It needs to be something that you decide as a leadership that filters down into your entire membership, your director's on board, and every new member coming in will be on board because they won't know any different. We've done some pretty interesting studies where we've had new members come in groups, and we've said, this is what we expect. And they just go, okay. And we go, okay. And then we've got some people who've been around for yonks going, well, I still don't want to do that. I have to work too hard for that. And then those other people are coming up and passing them in their opportunities. And they're going, well, hang on a second. Why are they getting to do that? It's like, well, they've come in and this is what the deal is. So communication is key on that, and setting up your culture to be transparent in your expectations is also key to that. And if there's anything I can help you with that, Gordon, just let me know.
Fantastic. I think that is our last question. So I think it's probably a good point to wrap it up. Even we're a few minutes late starting, we've gone over a couple more. So I think that's, we'll call it time for tonight. Thank you very much, Jen, for putting the session together for us. So everyone watching, please keep an eye on our YouTube channel. Tonight's session will be uploaded there in the coming days, along with all the resources that we talked about earlier that Jen has used during her presentation. So we'll get links to that so you can have a look at those as well. Also, all of our previous BHA live sessions are available, so check them out. Go to YouTube and search for Barbershop Harmony Australia, or just go to the BHA website and follow the links on the homepage. I will also post some links now in the chat for you, so take a look there and grab a copy before we finish up for the night. Now, our next session is going to be in 2 weeks' time. This is a vocal production Q&A, and it's being hosted by two of our education faculty members, Beck Hewitt and Vicky Dwyer. Now, keep an eye on the social media and your email. We'll be sending out a link to a form that will let you submit questions prior to the session. So that will give Beck and Vicky a bit of a heads up as to the sort of things that you might want to talk about. So that'll be hitting your inboxes very soon. Remember, this session is in 2 weeks' time. So this next BHA Live will be on the 14th of August. Now, many of you have hopefully also seen BHA have launched a National Quartet E-Challenge. Now, this is an opportunity for you all to get a chance to compete with your quartets via video entry, of course, doing so in a socially responsible way. And we realise this may vary from state to state. So please take a look at the BHA website, as we've put all the information that you need to know up on there. A big thanks again to Jen for tonight's session, and thank you to you all for coming and watching. Hope you have a great weekend, and we'll see you all in 2 weeks' time. Good night.
Night.